Education opens doors for the gospel, bringing hope to dark places and sparking lasting change around the world. At TeachBeyond, we're reaching the nations through education.
This is Transformed and Transformational, a podcast from TeachBeyond. I'm Kian.
And I'm Heather. We're exploring how the gospel transforms us and overflows to impact classrooms, communities, and the world.
Let's jump into today's conversation.
Our topic today is study abroad. So I'm really curious, Kian, did you study abroad at all during your time in university?
I didn't study abroad. I wish I could have lived abroad, studied abroad. I did do a number of internships, which I know don't really count. But Heather, what about you? Did you do any study abroad?
Well, internships, they are a great experience, just different. And I recognize, study abroad doesn't necessarily fit in a lot of people's course schedules or just life schedules. So that was the case for me. I didn't do a semester long study abroad trip, which I think is what most people think of when they think of study abroad experiences. But I did do two different shorter study abroad trips that were 2 weeks long each at different points in my college year. So there was coursework we did beforehand and then did some things while we were traveling too.
That is amazing. That sounds really fun. Can you tell me, where did you go?
This won't surprise you. They were both to Europe and ended up serving in Europe. Nice. So the first one was to Austria, Germany, and France. So we were on a bus moving from place to place. And ironically, we went right through the Black Forest region where I ended up moving back to teach a few years later. And I can remember being in Innsbruck, Austria, eating sausage like outside in a little, courtyard area. And I was like, I know German from high school. I'm going to use this. And they laughed at me there. And I was like, oh no, I thought I could, get by on this trip because I know a little German. Sure enough, it did end up helping me when I lived in Germany, but certainly it was a good, humbling experience, but helps to at least try to use language. The other one was to London, so English speaking, but 2-week intensive for student teaching at a primary school outside of the city of London. And that was a totally different experience because instead of moving around on a bus, I lived in a dorm. I took public transport to my placement every morning, and I was going to the same place every day, seeing the same students. So it was only 2 weeks of time, which goes really quickly when in terms of building relationships or, familiarity, but you do sort of settle into a rhythm.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. That sounds so cool.
Yeah. Those experience, I look back and I think that did impact me as I was considering teaching overseas. But I can also only imagine how impactful it would be to spend half a semester or a whole term in another culture. And that's what our guests today are going to share about.
Today, we are going to talk with 4 TeachBeyond members who serve in 3 different schools on 3 different continents, who all had study abroad experiences. Zeke and Abby Esteban studied abroad in and now live in Latin America, Nicole DeBryan in Europe, and Kylie Stancliffe in Southeast Asia.
This is a great episode for anyone who is considering studying abroad or preparing to study abroad, or if you just want to hear stories of how God has been at work in these experiences. Welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
The toucans are saying welcome too. That's great.
Actually, it's brown jays right now, but I'll let you know when we hear a toucan.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect. As we get started, so we have a lot of people in the room right now. I would love to just hear where you're living right now, what you're doing there, and maybe we'll just let's go through the time zone. So let's just start at the earliest in the day and move towards night. So can you tell us where you're located, what your name is?
Yeah, so my name is Zeke. And
I'm Abby.
And we are the Esteban family, and we are right now in Honduras teaching at a bilingual school.
My name is Nicole DeBryan, and I am in Albania serving at GDQ International Christian School as a grade 3 teacher.
My name is Kylie. I'm living and serving in Chiang Mai, Thailand at Grace International School as a high school teacher.
Awesome. It's so fun to have everyone here from such far-flung places. As we start, we're talking about study abroad also. So I'm curious if you can talk about where did you study abroad and why did you specifically choose those locations?
Yeah, so Abby and I chose to study abroad with Living and Learning International. That's a program that has a couple different locations, but we went to Quito, Ecuador. And we did end up traveling around Ecuador for a while, but it was an amazing experience. And we actually both came to it we both came to choosing to go to Quito separately, but also we went at the same time. So it was kind of together, but kind of separate.
Yeah, and we kind of chose it kind of with the direction of this program does internships. And so we would both get a lot of experience in the community. And that was one of the main reasons that drew both of us to it, was that we would get a lot of cultural immersion and experience serving. So.
And in a Spanish speaking country, because we both wanted to develop our Spanish skills more.
Yeah, so we were so glad to be there with Living and Learning International. We absolutely love their program and only have amazing things to say about them.
I went to Italy and I served in Trieste, Italy at the International School of Trieste. And I actually went through a program called Stage, which TeachBeyond is partners with. So that was an amazing experience. I actually did not choose to go to Italy. It was kind of put into my lap. I was actually originally supposed to go to Rwanda, but then a couple weeks before I was leaving, Rwanda had a virus outbreak. And so at the last minute, Stage was actually able to switch my placement, and they were amazing through that transition. And so I ended up going to Italy.
I imagine that was a really big mental shift to be thinking you're going to Rwanda and then end up in Italy, Nicole.
It was a crazy time for me, and like really tested me spiritually of like, okay, do you believe in like the Lord's plan being better than your own plan? Because I had my visa, I had my vaccines, I literally had my clothes packed, like I was ready to go. And then like 2 weeks before, they were like, we have a virus, we don't know if this is gonna be possible. And Stage didn't know if they would even be able to replace me, or find me a new place to go because it was so late. But they just worked so hard, and there were so many prayers, and so I was still able to student teach abroad, which was such a blessing because I wanted to go so bad, and it definitely pushed me in my faith, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, I studied abroad in Chiang Mai, actually here in Chiang Mai where I'm living now. And my situation, it was like a program through the University of Arkansas where I went to college. And so it wasn't a Christian specific like internship. And honestly, I chose Chiang Mai because the University of Arkansas had like two locations where they could offer teaching internships over the summer, and one of them was in Europe. I don't even remember where, but it was a place that I had already like visited on vacation. And then the other one was Chiang Mai, and I was like, I want to go somewhere new, like somewhere totally different. And so I literally just randomly chose it, and I obviously had no idea that I would end up moving here later. But yeah, when I first came, I was like when I studied abroad, I was living with a local Thai family and teaching English at a local temple school. So like a public Buddhist temple school. So it was also really a testing of my faith. Like, wow, how can I share the gospel in this place where it's so clearly not present? It was really cool.
Yeah. Wow. It's so interesting how each of you did your study abroad experience in the region where you're serving. Obviously, Kylie, where you like in the same city, but the others of you in the region, but a different part of the region. And Nicole, not knowing that you would be ending up in Europe with that change from Africa to Europe. So I'm sure we'll hear all different kinds of stories as we continue in this conversation. And it's just so encouraging to hear about how even I'm already hearing about the intentionality with which you are approaching your experience through the lens of your faith and how God was at work in that situation. So I'm curious, what comes to mind in thinking back to that time as most formative or memorable experiences during your study abroad?
One thing for me was traveling independently was really fun for me, but also very formative of learning how to use maps in a way that's effective. Getting on a bus in a foreign country is more difficult than it seems. And so for me, being able to go, and I went most weekends, I would go on a trip within Italy or even like to Slovenia. And that was a really good experience for me to, I just came back so much more confident in myself and like my abilities. And also just being alone, like being comfortable in like, oh, I can be alone as an extrovert and still be okay. And so that was really formative for the Lord to just be like, okay, we're going to spend time like just you and me. And like, you're going to become comfortable with that instead of like always needing like the noise of college or living in a dorm, like being able to step outside of that while still in college was like really helpful to transition me out of college into adult life.
Yeah, I'm going to hop on that and also talk about that I took a public transportation system, so combination of buses, sometimes taxis, um, the occasional trolley to get to my internship every other day, to get to my homestay. And honestly, my homestay parents were kind of surprised because they're like, it's not safe to do that as much, it's not as clean. But I just was able to people watch while I was taking those. I mean, I probably spent 100 hours over my study abroad on public transport, just watching people. Sometimes I one time had an older lady ask me for directions, and I was like, I'm actually new here, but I know how you can get there. Um, and you just see everything on public transport. You see people begging, you see people in a rush, you see people with nowhere to go. And so it was just very formative to watch and to learn about the world while I was taking public transportation. But on top of that, my homestay also was very formative. I was only in a homestay for a month, but it taught me just it gave me family in another culture and another location. And I think people are in the end game what you hold on to the most with the study abroad, or who you learn about the most. So.
Yeah, I think on top of that, just learning about the people and the culture, I was able to intern at a school, and that was kind of where I saw like this mix of like people and education and how it was just so different, and so different than what I thought. And yeah, just like their flexibility with things was so different as opposed to like a rigid school schedule. They were just so like, yeah, you can teach whatever you want, like whenever you want. And I'm like, oh, okay, perfect. Like, glad we have a good system down. Like, so just like the flexibility and just the openness to like welcome me in to their community and to trust me. Like, they were like, yeah, you are Spanish education major, like you can teach Spanish to our native Spanish speakers. And I was like, no way, Jose, like that's ridiculous. Like I am not qualified for that. And ironically, in just the way that the Lord works, like I teach third grade ELA in the mornings, but I also teach native Spanish speakers every afternoon, second through fifth grade now. And so it's just funny how the Lord works in that them kind of like throwing me into that role and me being like, absolutely not. This is way above my pay grade. And now that's what I do every single day. So yeah, just like the people and their willingness to just be like, yeah, we trust you and you can do this kind of thing.
My most formative, memorable experience while studying abroad was actually part of my program, or like part of my goal of the summer was I was having to write my like honors thesis for the honors college at the University of Arkansas. And my research question was like, how does religion impact education in Thailand? Well, it was more specific than that, but in general, that's what I was asking. And so a large part of my summer was me interviewing Thai teachers, like how does Buddhism impact your teaching? And it was so interesting to me because I was teaching there too, like I was interning there, and I saw like we are the school, it's a public school, it's located at a Thai temple. So literally every single aspect of their education is being influenced by Buddhism. But when I was asking the Thai teachers, they were telling me like, oh, well, we don't have enough like space to build a big enough playground for our students. Or like, oh, sometimes we don't like that the campus is open because a lot of people come into the school property that we don't know. But they weren't telling me anything about like the heart or what the students are learning about Buddhism or anything like that. And so it was really interesting to me and just opened up my heart a lot to Thai people and to learn just how integrated Buddhism is with Thai people. And I don't know, it was so memorable and just stood out so much to me that we were seeing such different things when living the same reality. Um, and I don't know, really opened my heart to like, wow, Lord, these people are seeking. Like they really want to know God and they just don't know you. And I don't know. It was really, really memorable though to hear the Thai teachers, local Thai teachers explaining the struggles that they have being a public Thai school and it all being like about the physical location and nothing about the religion, even though that was what I was asking. So that was really memorable for me.
That's so interesting as you talk about all of these different cultural experiences and how they were hard and different as you transition to a new place for study abroad. Then also the religious side of it. Like, what did it look like being a Christian overseas, serving, doing study abroad? And a lot of you guys, as you talk about it, you kind of came with it as a missional experience, an idea, way to integrate and share your faith in a foreign country. Um, so what did that look like? And what was kind of your experience as you did bring yourself, your Christianity, who you are, to these other places in your study abroad?
Yeah, so Ecuador's generally speaking a pretty Christian country. There's really only churches there. I don't think I ever saw a mosque or even a synagogue while I was there. So I actually was able to try out a lot of churches. I tried very Pentecostal, very charismatic churches, bilingual churches, even went to a Catholic mass, which I'm not Catholic, but that was part of one of my classes' projects. So I was able to see a lot, but there's definitely some spiritual warfare that's happening there, and I think I saw it most when we went to the Amazon region of Ecuador to do a short-term mission trip, and there we met and taught a lot of kids whose families were from tribes in the jungle, and they took a boat and a couple cars in order to get to school, and they boarded there for a while, but it was there and other places that there may be churches, but they weren't full. That it felt like there was a lot of spiritual warfare and that there were a lot of things um, that may not be culturally opposed to Christians, but really were opposed to um, just the work of Christ and God's kingdom and trying to keep, I don't know, real Christianity from taking root in certain places. So I felt like that was something we really ran into. But there was the faith infrastructure, churches, mission groups to also rely on.
I think a good example of it and kind of how it hit me was, yes, like Zeke said, there are a lot of churches. Catholicism is really big, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the relationship. And trying to kind of explain that relationship and what that looks like just through your life. I lived with a single mom, and she was not a Christian. Went to church, definitely had some church hurt, and it was really, really hard for me and my roommate to navigate because we have both grown up in, we're both preachers' kids, like have both grown up in very like Christian influenced families. Like family time was really important to us. And then we were both faced with this single mom who was kind of had started taking in students because she was really lonely and she really wanted something to fulfill her life. And so it was just a very good practice in like, okay, how can we live our lives to like, we're going to go to church every Sunday. Like we're going to make that a priority. And like, we're going to try to bring up and have these conversations in Spanish. Me and my roommate would like try to have the conversation in Spanish instead of reverting to English. So that way, like she could be included in it. So they were just like such little things, but it was something that really affected our time there because we were living there. And I think with study abroad, like that's the difference than if you are just going on vacation or if you do like a semester at sea and you're like bouncing around to all of these different places. With study abroad, you are living somewhere, and that makes all the difference in the world. And so, yeah, just being able to be there and be an influence, even if it's for a short amount of time, just to my host mom, yeah, just felt like a really big way to like incorporate my faith in my study abroad.
Yeah, I agree with Abby. My host living situation was pretty similar. I also lived with a single mom and then her son. And that was really hard for me. And our relationship was difficult for me to navigate. Growing up in a Christian home to then switching to, okay, these people don't believe the same thing as me. And I kind of have to stick up for my faith. And when I'm being questioned, like, why are you going to church every Sunday? Why are you doing this? And so that was like a hard relationship for me to navigate when I come from like such a like nurturing Christian family who just like kind of understands those things. And so I think my faith was like really pushed and also seeing, okay, unbelievers live differently because they don't have Jesus. And so I can't expect them to live a certain way when they aren't followers. and I still need to love them well, even when I'm feeling hurt by them. And there were like cool moments that made it be like, okay, I get why you put me in this host family. Like I see the good in it, Jesus. One of those moments for me was, so I had like a little host brother. He was super sweet. He was in middle school. And one night it was just me and him having dinner together. And I was like, I'm going to pray before I eat. Like, can I pray with you? And he was like, I don't know what that, like, what do you mean? Like, how do you pray? And so I like taught him like how I pray. And so just like being able to plant seeds like here and there, and also like being able to try to like maintain a positive relationship, because okay, I'm not here for a week. I'm not here like what Abby's saying on vacation. Like this is like my life for more than just a quick trip. And so that was like a hard thing for me to navigate, but made me more confident in my faith, which I think was a blessing. And even like being able to go to church and connecting at church with like so many amazing Christians was like so sweet, especially in a place like Italy where there's not a church on every corner. My first Sunday there, I Googled churches in Trieste, and there was two that popped up. And so I went to the first one on Google because I was like, okay, that's the first one that popped up. And I was welcomed with such warm arms, and I stayed there the entire time that I went. And it was such a blessing to me. And it was a blessing that I wasn't expecting to receive in a place where Christianity isn't the main religion. And so that was like, I felt really seen by the Lord in that, because he knew how important having Christian community would be for me, especially when I was living with someone who wasn't a Christian and I needed that support and accountability in Christianity.
Yeah, my experience also was mainly at my homestay. Honestly, both, like homestay and work. But at my homestay, the family that I was living with was Buddhist, and they had like a 3 bedroom, pretty traditional style Thai home, and one of the entire bedrooms was like a shrine, where they would like bring offerings every single day, and I just saw like how devoted this family was to Buddhism. And honestly, I just think God just like broke my heart for what breaks his heart. Like that was kind of a lot of my prayer as I was studying abroad. Like God, open my eyes and like break my heart for what breaks yours. Help me to see and speak into things as you see fit. And I just realized like through their devotion, like how much they were seeking and wanting to know God, but they just didn't have the information. Like they just had never heard about Jesus. I tried to talk to them a few times, and I don't know, I think God really opened my heart to Thai people and just made me recognize more hands-on like what unreached people are and how, I don't know, how open their hearts can be. And I just felt really, really called and assured by God, like, okay, yeah, it's Thai people that I want you to work with at least in this next season. And I don't know, I would have never thought that without having studied abroad and seen it so clearly, like in this family. Like, yeah, they had 2 kids and like and the parents, and so in an American house it would be really obvious. Like, okay, both of the kids have their own room, the parents have their own room, but like the brother and sister had to share one room, and specifically one bed. Like it wasn't a very wealthy family, and this entire other room was specifically for this like Buddhist shrine in their home. um yeah, and so it really opened my eyes and my heart to just like who unreached people are and the heart that God has for them to know him.
Yeah, I mean, you think about how Abby and Zeke, you actually had a built-in short-term mission trip within your study abroad. But for all 4 of you, it was that intentional living, seeing the people in front of you that kind of exposed you to how God is at work in the everyday, right? It doesn't have to be, I'm taking this intentional mission trip over here to do this thing. To be able to see the people in front of us and to live out our faith. And that's what I'm hearing from each of you. So I guess I'm curious, before this experience, did you already know that you wanted to be pursuing missions in the way that you are now? Was study abroad kind of part of that discernment? How did that impact your sense of calling to missions, if at all?
In college, the church that I went to in college, I was working with the international ministry there. Like we had a specific college international ministry team. And so I knew before I studied abroad that I loved working with people from other countries and that I just had a heart for that. And so I think I had an inkling and an idea. But when I studied abroad, I think God really, really confirmed in my heart, like, yes, missions is something that I'm inviting you into, just especially the way that I just felt like, I don't know, like my eyes were open to unreached people and my heart just opened up so much to them. Like, wow, they want to know and they don't have a chance. And then also while I was here, it was a total God thing, but while I was studying abroad, and I only studied abroad for one summer, so like 8 weeks. Um, and while I was here, I literally like randomly got sat next to this stranger on a plane, and I was talking to her like, "Oh, what are you doing in Chiang Mai?" And she told me about Grace International School and was telling me like, "Oh, I'm coming to see if I want to work at this school." And I was like, "No way!" And that was my first ever like exposure to the school that I work at now. And that just feels like, yeah, such a God thing for me to be sitting next to this like random girl on the plane and then to learn where I would come to work for 5 years. So pretty cool.
Yeah, I knew in some capacity that I had a heart for the nations, but I've always been such a homebody that I was like, I probably am not going to go. And so, student teaching abroad for me felt like my trial run. Like, can I actually handle being away from home? And a week into being in Italy, I met up with some of my friends who are also student teaching abroad in Europe. And I remember telling them, like, I don't think I'm going to do this after. Like, this is so hard. And I was like a week in. And I think that like speaks like giving it time, because at the end of my experience, 2 weeks after I got back home to America, I was filling out my application with TeachBeyond. And I was like, I'm going, like, I want to do this. I know that this is like what the Lord's put on my heart, this passion and excitement to be abroad, and to serve the nations. And that's the calling that the Lord's given me in this season. And so I think that just is like giving some things time and adjusting is a huge thing. And yeah, it was a great trial run. It was successful because now I'm in Albania.
That's great.
Yeah, I think also just speaking to like the trial run, I really felt a strong call to overseas missions when I was in high school. And so I almost didn't even go to college because I just wanted to go into the mission field. And now I'm super glad I did because I have the education background to do what I'm doing. But yeah, so it was also kind of like my trial run, and being able to practice my Spanish and kind of develop that. But I will say that it definitely, Zeke and I did not intend to study together, but having our study abroad experience and going through culture shock and doing some of those things together has kind of definitely prepared us for where we are now. And it definitely, like, yeah, going with somebody that you're dating doesn't work for everybody, but the Lord made it work out for us in a really, really sweet and cool way.
Yes, it was really awesome. For me, I didn't know that I wanted or that I would do missions. I still am on track to enter the medical field in the next couple years. And I always thought if I would do missions, I would go as a doctor, I would be in a hospital, and I would not be teaching children, that's for sure. But the short term mission trip that we did while we were in our study abroad really just opened my eyes to it all. I'm like, you know what? Actually, there's a lot of work that I could do here with the education that I have without needing the further education. So it was just one of those that when we were talking about what we were going to do after we get married and after we graduated, I really, without Ecuador, I don't think I would have felt comfortable saying, yeah, let's go to Central America and do missions because I wouldn't feel prepared or equipped really to do it. So I think the study abroad experience really equipped me for that. And it also academically, we spent a lot of time talking about missions. When we were in our study abroad, we talked about the purpose of short-term missions. We did a short-term mission right in the middle of talking about how short-term missions can be harmful. And it was just a really good time to process and to talk over purpose of missions, the dangers of it, the failings, certain stories, but also then once you've talked about and realized all that, to realize and really see what God is doing with missions. So that was something that study abroad really helped me with.
Our weekly spotlight this week is short-term opportunities.
Whether it's student teaching like Nicole, or serving on an English camp, or a number of other opportunities, this is a great way to explore cultures and get outside of your comfort zone, as we've been hearing. Click on the link in the show notes or visit teachbeyond.org/short-term.
Now back to our conversation about study abroad and missions. You guys came in with so much intentionality as you were planning and thinking about it. And I'm curious, as you've then now done a study abroad and now are serving overseas, do you have any advice for college students as they're thinking about or preparing for a study abroad? What encouragement do you have for them as they're to make the most of their experience in terms of preparing for, discerning, or engaging in missions?
Yeah, I think I would say go in with an open mindset. And like even what Zeke was saying earlier, of like he went in thinking this, that he was going to enter the mission field doing medical, and now he's a teacher. Like it just is such a testimony of like surrendering your plans to the Lord's plans. And like I think he just uses that time of studying abroad to be like, hey, do you trust me? And here is my plan for your life, and my plan's far better than yours. And I want to give you this far better plan that's going to like exceed all of your expectations. So definitely like going in with an open mindset and like hands open to like what the Lord has for you overseas, and when you come back, what your next steps look like, being open with that and being willing to surrender to that, and also leaning into the hard, I think is really important, and not backing away from the hard, because there's going to be hard things, whether it's a difficult host family or a difficult school placement or just navigating your way around the city, buying groceries. Like there's going to be something that is difficult or inconvenient because you are not living in your home country and most likely not speaking your language. And so like leaning into that, because I really believe that that is where the Lord is like going to grow you, is like in that pressing, and it feels hard, but then it turns into something beautiful, and the Lord develops and grows you in a beautiful way. And so I think it's just such a fun opportunity in life. And I would say that everyone should definitely do it at some point, because you learn so much about yourself. And whether that's just like your confidence or your bravery, you just learn so much about yourself and about the Lord and about your relationship with the Lord. And so I would definitely tell anyone who's even slightly considering it to lean into that, pray about it, and go. Another thing that I would say is like, as you're going through this process, like before you go abroad, while you're abroad, and then after, like really taking the time to reflect on what you're experiencing, because you need to process that, and also taking the time to process it with the Lord and pray about it. For me, I went alone. And so it was me and the Lord processing. But for someone who goes with someone, also processing with that person and being aware that when you go back, or whatever that looks like, there's going to be people who are not going to understand it. And there's going to be people who are going to say, how was it? And all they want you to say is, good, it was great. Or they want like maybe a sentence blurb, or like 2 sentences, like, it was good, here's my favorite part. And then there's some people who are actually going to want to sit down and like hear the deeper version, and being aware that who are your people that you can process it with, but also knowing they weren't there. And so there's, to an extent, they don't get it. And so I take a lot of comfort even now living in Albania, in the names of God of being Emmanuel and Elroy, the God with us and God who sees us, because I know that he's with me and he sees me, even like when people back home don't, or when people here don't see what I'm feeling emotions towards back home. Like he gets all my areas of life, all the countries I've been to. He understands all of it, which is such a comfort to my heart.
Yeah, in short, mine would be just always say yes within like a safety region, obviously. But I think the greatest disservice that you can do while studying abroad is saying no, because there are just so many opportunities that might be outside of your comfort zone, or you might be like, I would never do that if I was back home. But the experience can be so fun and so rich. And one of like my favorite memories that I have with my host mom, which again was kind of a hard relationship, was we had gone to this celebration, and it was something that was like in the city street, and we were just standing there watching these street performers, and it was just like a super fun, like cultural, what is going on kind of experience. And then all of a sudden, the like people who were leading it were like, everybody join in. And obviously, like, not everybody joined in the circle, but my mama was like, yeah, let's go dance in the middle of the street with all these people. And my roommate was like, no way. And I was like, in my soul, I was like, absolutely not. I do not want to do this. But I was like, you know what? If I don't say yes to this, I'm going to regret it. And so now there's this like super fun video that my roommate caught of me and my mama like holding hands and like going into the middle of a circle and going out of a circle and like twirling around with all of these random people that I don't know. But it was such a fun and sweet cultural experience because I was just like, okay, this is uncomfortable, but I'm going to say yes and I'm going to do it. So I think that's one of the biggest pieces of advice is like, even if it's a place that you're not sure that you want to go, because I don't know, there are snakes there or something. Like, we currently live in the jungle and I think about snakes all the time, but it's like, that can't keep me from doing what I'm called to do. And so, yeah, just being mindful of being open to the yes and being open to what God has for you, because some of the sweetest memories are in those moments.
I would agree with Abby on that. Some of the things I said yes to, it was not dancing in the street, but my host family did have me after. I was only with my host family for a month, and so after that time, I would visit them regularly. And one time, I went to pretty much a block party they had that was a lot of dancing and a lot of random dancing, and you're just like, okay, I'll join in. Another time, we went to uh, a monument probably 2 hours away, and halfway there we got brunch, and there's quite a few indigenous groups in the area, and so a couple of them were playing, a couple people from one of the groups were playing some music, and then everybody just started getting up and dancing as well. I don't know why dance is such a big memory,
Yeah,
but
this
everybody
is a
started getting up
theme.
and dancing. And so then my host, pretty much my host sisters, got me up there, and we were all dancing, and it was a fun time. And one lady learned that I was from America, took a selfie of us, and I'm on somebody's phone somewhere. I don't know. But saying yes to those things, whether it be going playing soccer with strangers, or deciding, hey, yeah, my friends wanted to check out this one restaurant on the other side of the city, we'll do it because we want to see the world. We want to see this place and really live here. It's really tempting to have a long day at an internship, have a long day out in classes, and then come home and just want to veg, or just take all the time to yourself. When in reality, I think it's really good to really push yourself and try to see more of where you are. So yeah.
Yeah, I think my advice would be along similar lines. Like, I don't know, my experience obviously was unique that I studied abroad in the place where I ended up living, but I think even no matter where you are, I think studying abroad can just be such a good opportunity to like learn about other cultures, to stretch yourself, to grow as an individual in God, and to like learn about God's heart for the world and for his people. And I love the stories that you guys are sharing because it's like, yeah, you wouldn't see that you in most places, right? But like, I don't know, I just think God has created all of these cultures that are so beautiful and so unique, and getting to experience them and like just see his heart for those people and the way that he's given them creativity and joy, and getting to experience that. I think, yeah, my advice for people interested in studying abroad is, yeah, to like almost like lean into the weird, like ask questions, be curious, do things that stretch you, and try to look for like where's God in these moments. Like, I don't know, for example, Thailand has like the best fruit that I've ever eaten in my life, and I'm like, wow, God, I'm thinking this is a gift from you. Like, but just things like that. Like, where has God given gifts in this culture, and trying to open your eyes to God's heart for the world and for those people as you're there, even in the things that are, yeah, like uncomfortable or weird.
Well, I feel like we've already touched on this in so many ways, but would love to just hear, as you reflect back, how you see your study abroad experience preparing you for or impacting what you're doing today. Like, if you could sum that up, how do you see that playing out today?
Yeah, I think that this is such a good question because I know that student teaching abroad and my experience in Italy definitely prepared and equipped me for what I'm now doing in Albania. And I'm really grateful for that in the ways that it has equipped me, whether I've seen that come to life already, or maybe it's something that I haven't even seen the connection yet. I know that there are a lot of different connections. One thing that's had a huge impact on me is during my time in Italy, my classroom had a lot of different cultures. And so being aware of the different cultures and seeing how my mentor teacher at the time navigated the different cultures and learning from her was super key to now being able to be aware of the different cultures in my current classroom and learning how to be sensitive towards that and what that looks like to just include everyone's cultures and celebrate our diversity and our unity. I learned a lot about that while student teaching, and now I get to bring it into my own classroom and continue to learn and develop. And so that was something that really impacted me in Italy. And honestly, that's where I kind of grew my heart and love for different nationalities and cultures. And so that love began to really blossom in Italy during my time student teaching. And now it's just grown so much. So I'm really grateful for that. And another thing that student teaching abroad prepared me for missions was it definitely prepared me both spiritually and mentally. There's like some aspects of like, quote unquote, I knew what to expect. I mean, there's so much unexpected, but I knew, okay, here's what it's going to feel like to navigate my way around a new city. It's going to feel really overwhelming at first. And then slowly, day by day, it'll get better. And eventually I won't need Google Maps. And like, I know what it's going to feel like to miss home and go to a different church and have to put myself out there in that way. And so being prepared for what that looks like was really huge for me to come into Albania knowing that I could do it and that the Lord would be with me in it. But I also want to say in that things are so different, especially when you're staying longer for more than just a couple months. I think the mindset is different. It even feels different from the beginning. And so I'm really grateful for the ways that student teaching abroad did equip me for my time now. But it also is extremely different. But something that I have constantly been able to go back to is the Lord's faithfulness in Italy. And I think that really gave me even the courage to come to Albania and be like, I'm really nervous and anxious to come, but reflecting on even the fact that I was supposed to go to Rwanda and the Lord prepared a way for me to go to Italy in less than 2 weeks. And I got to Italy and I had community instantly. Like that was a past faithfulness that I really reflected before coming to Albania. Was like, he was so faithful in such a short timeline. Like he's gonna be faithful again. Like that's who he is. That's part of his character. And I learned a lot about his character of faithfulness and provider in Italy. And it's been so good to like call up his past faithfulness and remind myself of that, especially when it's been hard in Albania. So that's been something that student teaching abroad really equipped and prepared within me, was my spiritual and mental like preparation was huge.
It's helped me a lot know how to serve my students best and recognizing those cultural differences as well, and being able to say like, okay, I need to have an extra dose of grace or an extra dose of patience because we're coming from two different perspectives. And this is, yes, you're being raised in a bilingual school, and so there are certain things that overlap, but at the end of the day, yeah, just like who you're going home to. And a lot of parent meetings, I feel like my study abroad experience and having conversations cross-culturally and developing that empathy has really helped with parent communication and how difficult that can be cross-culturally. And yeah, again, just the reminder of like, okay, my students are seeing the cultural side that they live in, and then they're also experiencing my culture. And the ultimate goal is that we're bringing the culture of Jesus and of Christianity and building their faith and building them as human beings to love God. And so, yeah, just kind of how all those things intersect, I think, already coming from, okay, let's analyze this culture, let's analyze how we can, I don't know, just appreciate other people's differences and work with other people from study abroad has definitely carried over as I learned to love and serve my students better.
Amazing. It has been so good to talk to all of you and hear your stories. And I know we could just keep talking and hear more about your experience and what your study abroad experience meant for the rest of your life for serving in missions now. But we have to eventually end our conversation. So before we let you guys go, we do have one final question I like to ask all of our guests. And that's what's one thing that's changing your life these days. So this can be something big or small, a book you're reading, some new food you've tried, or something. So that might be the small example, or something really big. You can kind of take it where you want to go. I'll go first, and then Heather will go, and we can kind of just go around the room and share what's changing our life. So what's changing my life is a long time ago in this podcast, I shared that we had some new neighbors move in, and we live in a cul-de-sac, and eventually I would make friends. And so this is kind of an update of we've started. It is warming up now, and so people are starting to come out of their houses and play in the cul-de-sac, and so it's been really fun to interact with our neighbors, get to know our neighbors a lot more in the last couple of weeks.
That's a great update. Yes. And yeah, being outside is a great way to just be the kids playing together. It's always fun to have a neighborhood friend. What's changing my life lately is the podcast called Pray the Word with David Platt. And I discovered this podcast a while ago, and for some reason it just wouldn't download. I could not play the episodes. And so I kind of put it to the side. I didn't really actually know what it was like because I couldn't download it. And then just one day it started downloading, and I was like, hey, look at this. I have a new podcast to listen to. And they're so short. They're about 5 to 6 minutes long. And so I try to do that while I'm eating breakfast, and it's a nice part of the morning routine. And basically it's a small devotional based on one verse in scripture usually, and then that leads to praying that verse, and then he prays for an unreached people group, and all within 5 minutes. So it just feels like a really great start to the day to be focused on just one verse in scripture and praying that, and then also praying for an unreached people group. So highly recommend. That'll be linked in the show notes, but hopefully it downloads for you. Who wants to go next? What's changing your life?
This is like kind of big, I guess, for me, for us.
It's big.
But we got a keyboard for our house here, which has been so exciting. We both love playing the piano, but we've also started leading worship for kind of our missionary meetings that we have every week. And so that's just been so fun and so filling for me, just to like sit down and play the piano and have my time of worship and actually be able to like play the piano in worship and not just listen to music. So it's been a big deal. I was really wanting one kind of since we got here to have a piano in my own home, and now we have one. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, for me, I've been reading this book, Disciplines of a Godly Man. And so I'm still very barely into it. I'm heading into the 3rd chapter here. But it's inspired me and Abby to some point to really set disciplines for ourselves, whether that be limiting screen time when we get home, or fitting in exercise, making sure we're keeping the Sabbath according to how we've decided, and just getting good habits of spending time in the Word, spending time in prayer, exercising, reading, for example, reading other books even. It's been really good to help me just set those disciplines, because sometimes it's when you're abroad that it's the hardest to do so, because you work all day, you're teaching, and then you come home and you don't want to discipline yourself to do anything more. You've been disciplining yourself in front of kids the whole day. But it's been really helpful just for me to realize and recognize the importance of those disciplines. So yeah, that's been awesome.
Mine is actually also a podcast, Heather. I've been recently listening to the BEMA podcast, and I teach history. I don't know if I ever said that in this, but it feels important to mention with this podcast. So it's called the BEMA podcast, and it's actually led by a Messianic Jew, and he's also kind of a scholar, and he goes through scripture and teaches like what Jewish tradition says about it or how they would understand it. And so I've just learned a lot of like ancient writing practices and what numbers mean and things like that are, I don't know, as a history teacher, I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. I would have never known that before. And I've learned a lot from listening to that podcast, and it's been really fun and life-changing. So pretty cool.
Something that is changing my life these days. This is such a good question. But one thing is I have been reading before bed instead of scrolling on Instagram. And specifically, I've been reading The Chronicles of Narnia for the first time, and it has been amazing. I love this book series, and I'm now encouraging my students to read it, which has been really sweet.
That's great. I actually just mentioned a few episodes ago that I was reading The Chronicles of Narnia also, and it has been really fun to read. One of those books that feels like everyone's read and finally get to catch up on and read for the first time or read again.
Yes. And I love that habit of reading before bed. I also do that, and it was really helpful. That's great. Well, thank you so much to all of you for joining us for this conversation and for just sharing from your experiences, not only with studying abroad, but seeing God and seeing him at work in the world through that experience and from that experience, and seeing him at work in your own lives. Because as we see like our stories woven into the stories of people all around the world, we can see how he is moving in ways that we can't orchestrate or predict or even anticipate. And so, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
We all serve with TeachBeyond, a mission organization reaching the nations through education.
Want to learn more and get involved? Visit teachbeyond.org or follow us on social media.
To help more people find the podcast and hear about TeachBeyond, we'd love it if you would leave a rating or review and share the show with a friend. Be sure you're subscribed or following the show on the platform where you listen so you never miss an episode.
And as always, you can reach us at podcast@teachbeyond.org. We'll see you next week.